The alarm went off at 5:47 again. Same time, same sound, same choreography. Hit snooze once, scroll phone, bathroom, coffee, shower, same shirt rotation, same commute, same parking spot if he's lucky, same desk, same screen, same meetings with the same people saying different versions of the same things they said last Tuesday. Home by 6:30 if traffic cooperates. Dinner, screen time, bed by 11, reset. Friday, he tells himself it was a productive week. Sunday night, the dread starts building in his chest like a slow-filling bathtub, and he can't explain to his girlfriend why he's irritable, because he doesn't have language for what's actually wrong. Nothing is wrong. Everything is fine. The job pays well. The apartment is nice, he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. And somewhere around month 64 of this arrangement, while brushing his teeth on a Wednesday morning that looks identical to every other Wednesday morning, something cracks. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a hairline fracture in the foundation of the performance. He looks at himself in the mirror with toothpaste foam at the corner of his mouth, and the thought arrives unbidden and fully formed. I am not living my life. Someone else is living it through me. That's the moment. Not the decision that follows. Not the eventual change or the life restructuring or the dramatic exit. The moment of recognition. The instant when the mechanism becomes visible. When the man who has been operating on autopilot for years suddenly sees the autopilot. Sees the script. Sees that he has been reading lines in a play he never auditioned for. Performing a role someone else wrote. Pursuing objectives that were installed rather than chosen. Friedrich Nietzsche spent a considerable portion of his writing life trying to describe exactly this moment, the awakening of a man who realizes he has been asleep, and what happens in the body, in the psychology, in the entire architecture of a life when that recognition lands and will not go away. This is not about quitting your job. That's the reductive version people jump to because behavioral change is easier to conceptualize than psychological transformation. This is about something that happens before any external change, something that makes all subsequent external changes possible or impossible, depending on whether it completes. The internal rupture, the moment the slave sees the chains, which sounds dramatic until you realize the chains were never physical. They were conceptual. They were the borders of what you believed was possible, permissible, appropriate for someone like you. And the moment those borders become visible as constructions rather than facts, the entire game changes. Where are you watching this from? Drop your city in the comments because what I'm describing is geographically distributed, but psychologically identical. Men in Tokyo and Toronto and Sao Paulo and Stockholm, all having the same fracture moment, all recognizing the same mechanism, all asking the same question that has no easy answer. If I am not this, then what am I? Nietzsche wrote about the camel, the lion, and the child, 3 metamorphoses of the spirit. The camel kneels and accepts the load, carries it without complaint. The culture, the expectations, the shoulds, all of it piled onto his back, and he bears it because bearing is what he was taught. The camel is a good citizen, productive, respected, exhausted in a way he has learned not to name. Most men spend their entire lives as camels and never see another option because the camel is praised. The camel gets promoted. The camel gets the approval of the system that benefits from his load-bearing. And the system is very good at never mentioning that there are other animals. The lion is what comes next. But the lion only comes when the camel finally breaks under the weight and instead of collapsing, roars. The lion says no, says I will not, says this is not mine to carry. The lion does not accept the values that were handed down. He challenges them, interrogates them, refuses them when they fail the interrogation. The lion is not peaceful. The lion is not compliant. The lion makes people uncomfortable because the lion's very existence is a question. Why are the rest of you still kneeling? Most of this video is about the lion, about the specific psychological and practical mechanics of becoming him, about what it costs and what it returns and why so few men ever make the transformation, even after the moment of recognition has arrived. Because seeing the mechanism is not the same as escaping it. You can see the chains and still choose to wear them because taking them off requires something most men are not prepared to pay. The first thing that happens after the recognition, after the Wednesday morning mirror moment when the man sees clearly that he has been operating someone else's program, is doubt. Not about the recognition. The recognition feels true in a way that cuts through every layer of rationalization. The doubt is about whether acting on the recognition is permitted, whether he has the right to disrupt an arrangement that, however unsatisfying, is functional. The job pays the bills. The relationship is stable. The life looks good from the outside. Who is he to blow it up because of a feeling? This is where most men stop. Right here, in the gap between seeing and doing. They see the mechanism, feel the full weight of the recognition, and then recalibrate. Decide the feeling is a phase. Midlife crisis. Burnout. Something temporary that will pass if they just push through. They recommit to the performance with slightly more awareness, which makes the performance more exhausting but no less binding. Nietzsche would say this is the moment the camel tries to become a better camel. Stronger, more capable, more disciplined. The load is too heavy? Fine. Get stronger, train harder, optimize the carrying. This is the entire self-improvement industrial complex in a nutshell. Teaching the camel to carry more weight more efficiently, without ever questioning whether the camel should be carrying weight at all. The books, the courses, the morning routines, the productivity hacks, all of it designed to make you a more effective servant of a program you never agreed to. And the cruel joke is that it works. For a while, you do become more efficient, more capable, you carry more, and the system rewards you for it with slightly better compensation, slightly more responsibility, slightly more load. You have not escaped. You have been promoted within the captivity. The lion's transformation begins at the exact moment when the question shifts from how do I carry this better to why am I carrying this at all? That's the hinge. That's the philosophical pivot that separates the man who will remain a camel forever from the man who might become something else. The why question is dangerous. The system does not want you asking it because the system cannot answer it in a way that survives scrutiny. The answer is always some version of, because that's how things are done, because everyone does it, because you need to be realistic, because you have responsibilities, all of which are true in the sense that they describe the current arrangement, none of which are true in the sense that they justify the current arrangement. The moment you separate descriptive truth from justifying truth, the entire architecture starts to look optional. Here's what that looks like in practical terms. The man in the mirror starts interrogating his days, not with the productivity question, am I using my time well, but with the ownership question, is this my time? When he sits in the meeting that could have been an email, is he there because he chose to be, or because the system required it? When he works late to hit the deadline that only matters because someone upstream committed to it without consulting him, is he exercising his agency or renting it out? When he buys the thing he doesn't need with money he had to work overtime to earn, is he expressing preference or performing a script about what a man at his level is supposed to have? Every single day is full of moments where he is either choosing or being chosen for. And for most men, the ratio is catastrophically lopsided. Maybe 5% chosen, 95% being chosen for, and they wonder why they feel like they're disappearing. The lion reclaims the ratio, not in one dramatic gesture, not by quitting everything and moving to Bali. The fantasy version is useless. The lion reclaims through the accumulation of small sovereign acts. He says no to the meeting he doesn't need to attend. He stops working late on projects that don't matter. He quits optimizing metrics that benefit someone else's business model. He stops buying things to signal a status he doesn't actually care about. Each refusal is small. Individually, none of them changes the structure. But the accumulation, the pattern of consistent refusal to participate in arrangements that were never negotiated, reshapes the man. He starts to feel different in his body, less tense, less hunted. The permanent low-grade vigilance that characterized the camel's existence starts to relax because he is no longer managing a performance he doesn't believe in. This is where people around him start to notice, and they do not celebrate. This is important to understand going in, because if you think the people who benefit from your compliance are going to applaud your awakening, you are about to be educated in the hardest possible way. The girlfriend who liked the stable guy starts to feel destabilized. The boss who appreciated your reliability starts to view you as a problem. The friends who bonded with you over shared complaints start to feel judged by your refusal to complain. You have not attacked them. You have not criticized them. You have simply stopped participating in the shared performance, and your non-participation makes their participation visible, makes it a choice. And they preferred when it was just the way things are. Nietzsche called this the morality of the herd, not an insult, a description. The herd operates on consensus, on shared values that nobody questions because everyone participates. and the herd's stability depends on everyone continuing to participate. The moment one member stops, really stops, not just talks about stopping, the herd experiences it as a threat, not to their physical safety, to their psychological stability. Because if you are allowed to opt out, then they could opt out. And if they could opt out but aren't opting out, then they are choosing this. And that choice might not survive examination. So the herd does what herds do. It applies pressure. Social, emotional, financial. It reminds you of your obligations, your responsibilities, the people who depend on you. It reframes your awakening as selfishness, immaturity, a failure to understand how the real world works. And this pressure is effective because it activates the deepest mammalian fear, exile, the possibility of being cut off from the group, from belonging, from the social warmth that the camel traded his autonomy for. The lion learns to tolerate exile, not because he wants to be alone, because he has realized that the belonging he was accessing was conditional on his compliance, which means it was never really belonging. It was a transaction. You comply, we include you. You stop complying, the inclusion evaporates. That's not a relationship. That's a subscription service. And the moment you see it clearly as that, the threat of losing it loses most of its power. You're not losing connection. You're canceling a subscription that was costing more than it was worth. But here's what nobody tells you about this part, and it's the part that stops most men even after they've made it this far: the gap. The period after you've started saying no to the old arrangement, but before the new arrangement has assembled itself, where you're not a camel anymore, but you're not quite a lion yet either. You're just a man with a lot more free time and a lot less certainty about what to do with it. The camel always knew what to do. The script was clear. The expectations were defined. You just had to execute. But now the script is gone and you're holding your own time in your hands like a foreign object you don't have instructions for. This is the gap where most men panic and return to the camel. Because the camel, however unsatisfying, was never confusing. And confusion is more uncomfortable than exhaustion for most people. The lion sits in the confusion, learns to treat it as information rather than emergency, starts asking different questions. Not what should I do? That's still the camel's question, looking for external instruction. But what do I actually want? What matters when nothing external is dictating the answer? What would I build if I knew nobody was going to see it, applaud it, or compensate me for it? These questions take time to answer. Weeks, months, sometimes longer, depending on how thoroughly the camel's programming was installed. But the answers, when they start arriving, are structurally different from anything the camel ever produced. They come from a different place, not from the catalog of socially approved options, from the interior, from the part of him that survived the decades of load-bearing and is still, against all odds, capable of wanting something real. Nietzsche's third transformation is the child, the man who has reclaimed his capacity to create his own values from scratch, who does not need permission from the herd, who does not require validation from the system, who plays, in the deepest sense, engages with life as an act of genuine curiosity and creation rather than obligation. The child is not naive. The child is what comes after the lion has done his work, after the old values have been challenged and discarded, after the man has sat in the gap long enough to discover what's on the other side of the programming. The child is sovereignty, the capacity to say yes from a place of genuine desire rather than conditioned response, to say no without justification, to live in a way that requires no external script, because the internal compass is finally, after years of suppression, operational again. Most men never reach the child, not because they're weak, because the journey requires something that feels counterintuitive at every stage. It requires you to value your interior experience over your exterior reputation, your authentic preference over your socially conditioned response, your long-term sovereignty over your short-term comfort. These trades are not natural. They have to be chosen consciously, repeatedly, against enormous resistance, both internal and external. The internal resistance, the voice that says you're being selfish, irresponsible, unrealistic, is actually the hardest to overcome because it sounds like you. It has your concerns, your history, your specific fears. It knows exactly what to say to send you back to compliance, and it will say it every day until you learn to recognize it as the voice of the program, not the voice of your actual self. The practical mechanics of this transformation are less mysterious than the philosophy makes them sound. You start with audit. Complete, honest audit of your days. Not what you wish your days looked like, what they actually look like. How much time is truly yours versus how much is rented out to systems, expectations, performances, obligations that were never actually negotiated. Write it down. The numbers are usually worse than you thought. Most men discover they own maybe 10% of their waking life. The rest belongs to something else. That's your baseline. That's what you're working from. From there, you begin the reclamation project. 10% to 15%. 15 to 20. Not by blowing up your entire life in week 1. By making small territorial claims. Reclaiming the morning before work. Reclaiming the evening after. Reclaiming lunch. Reclaiming the weekend day that was supposed to be yours, but somehow always gets filled with other people's agendas. Each claim is a small battle. Each victory is a brick in the citadel. The other mechanic is value interrogation. For every major commitment in your life, your job, your relationship, your living situation, your social circle, you ask the ownership question: did I choose this? Or was it chosen for me? Did I say yes because I genuinely wanted it? Or because it was the next logical step in a progression I never questioned? And here's the uncomfortable part. Even if you chose it once genuinely, that doesn't mean you're obligated to maintain the choice forever. You are allowed to grow past your previous decisions. You are allowed to realize that the man who made that choice is not the man you are now. You are allowed to renegotiate. The camel thinks renegotiation is betrayal. The lion knows it's evolution. Some of these interrogations will confirm your current commitments. You'll realize you actually chose them, and they're still serving you. Great. Now you're there by choice instead of default, which changes the quality of the engagement entirely. Some interrogations will reveal commitments that were installed by expectation or momentum and are now just dead weight. These are harder, because removing them means confronting the people who benefit from them and who will absolutely frame the removal as your failure rather than your growth. Let them. Their framing is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to the man in the mirror who finally woke up and refuses to go back to sleep. The financial architecture matters more than anyone wants to admit. This is not just spiritual philosophy. This is math. The man who needs a high income to fund a high-cost lifestyle is structurally less free than the man who has kept his costs low. This is the variable nobody wants to talk about in the awakening conversation because it's not romantic. Everybody wants to talk about purpose and meaning and authentic self-expression. Nobody wants to talk about the fact that authentic self-expression costs time, and time costs money if you're not careful. And most men have built a lifestyle that requires them to sell all their time just to break even. That's not an accident. That's the design. The system wants you expensive, wants you leveraged, wants you locked into recurring costs that require recurring income that requires recurring compliance. The mortgage, the car payment, the lifestyle inflation, all of it serves as a compliance mechanism. The man who has downsized his costs has downsized his vulnerability. He can walk away from the job he hates because he doesn't need that much money. He can take the risk on the thing that doesn't pay yet because the overhead is manageable. He can say no without catastrophic consequence because his survival is not contingent on his compliance. This is where the camel to lion transformation either completes or collapses. If you do the spiritual work, but not the financial work, you end up a very enlightened man who still has to do what he's told because the bills won't pay themselves. If you do the financial work but not the spiritual work, you end up free in theory but still acting like a camel out of habit because the programming runs deeper than the practical constraints. You need both, the internal sovereignty and the external optionality, the psychology and the math. Get both right and you become genuinely difficult to control. Not difficult in the sense that you're combative, difficult in the sense that the usual levers, money, status, approval, have lost most of their grip because you've restructured your life so they're no longer necessary for your survival or your self-concept. Nietzsche wrote that the individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe, that the cost of independence is eternal vigilance against the pullback toward the herd. And he was right. The camel to lion transformation is not a one-time event. It's a continuous practice. The old programming doesn't delete. It just gets quieter. And in moments of stress, fatigue, uncertainty, the old voice returns. The voice that says the performance was easier. The compliance was safer. The script was clearer. You could go back. Nobody would blame you. Everyone would understand. This is the test the lion faces repeatedly, not the initial awakening. The temptation to go back to sleep after the awakening, when the new life hasn't fully formed yet and the old life is still accessible and familiar and warm. Hold through it. The temptation passes. The old life stops looking warm and starts looking small. The new life starts taking shape in ways you couldn't have predicted when you were still operating from the camel's logic. The people who couldn't handle your transformation filter out. New people arrive who recognize what you've become and are either becoming it themselves or have already completed it. The work changes quality. The relationships change depth. The days feel longer because you're actually present for them instead of managing the performance of presence, while your attention is fragmented across 12 different obligations you never wanted. Something shifts in your body. This is not metaphorical, physiological. The tension that used to live in your shoulders, your jaw, your chest, it starts to release. Not because life got easier, because you stopped carrying weight that was never yours. Stopped bracing against expectations you never agreed to. Stopped performing a version of competence for an audience that was never actually watching. The body knows the difference between chosen work and obligatory work, between authentic engagement and managed impression. And when the ratio tips far enough toward the authentic, the body relaxes in a way it hasn't since you were young, before the programming locked in, before the camel learned to kneel. The lion's roar is not loud. That's the thing movies get wrong. The lion doesn't announce his sovereignty. He embodies it, moves through the world with a quality of presence that doesn't require explanation or justification, doesn't need to prove he's free, is simply, obviously, structurally free in ways that make the camels uncomfortable, and the other lions nod in recognition. This is the signal that travels between men who have completed the transformation. Not verbal, not explicit, just the immediate visceral recognition of someone who has done the same work, who has asked the same questions and paid the same costs and arrived at the same place where external validation is no longer the currency of self-worth. You will lose people. Accept this now. The transformation is a filter. Some relationships were always conditional on your compliance, and when the compliance ends, so does the relationship. This is painful. It is supposed to be. The pain is the price of clarity. You finally know who was there for you and who was there for the version of you that served their needs. The people who remain after the filter are worth more than the entire previous roster. They are the ones who can handle your actual size, who don't need you smaller, who aren't threatened by your growth because they're growing themselves or because they're secure enough not to measure themselves against you. These are your people, not the ones you started with, the ones you found after you became fendable. The child in Nietzsche's framework is the man who has come out the other side of the lion's work and rediscovered play. Not play in the trivial sense. Play as the opposite of obligation. The capacity to engage with life as an act of genuine interest rather than strategic positioning. The child creates because creating is interesting, not because creating will produce recognition. The child explores because exploring is engaging, not because exploring will optimize some outcome. The child says yes to the things that light him up and no to everything else without needing a reason beyond. It doesn't light me up. This is the sovereignty that most men never access because they never complete the lion phase. They skip from camel to aspirational child, talking about authenticity and purpose, while still kneeling under the weight of obligations they're too afraid to interrogate. The child without the lion is just the camel with better marketing. You cannot skip the lion. The lion is the part where you destroy the old values so thoroughly that the new values have space to emerge, where you say no so consistently that your yes starts to mean something, where you reclaim your time so completely that you finally have to confront what to do with time that's actually yours. This confrontation is harder than people expect, because time that's yours is also time you're responsible for. You can't blame the boss, the system, the obligations. If you waste it, that's on you. If you spend it badly, that's your choice. The camel never has to face this because the camel's time was never his to waste. The child lives with this responsibility daily and calls it freedom. The exact moment the transformation completes is not marked by external change. You might still have the same job, the same apartment, the same relationship, but the quality of your participation has fundamentally shifted. You're there because you chose to be, not because you're supposed to be. And that shift, invisible from the outside, changes everything on the inside. The job stops feeling like a sentence and starts feeling like a temporary arrangement you're participating in for specific, chosen reasons. The relationship stops being a script you're performing and becomes an interaction between two people who are both present. The day stops being something you survive and becomes something you inhabit. This is not about achieving some final state of permanent satisfaction. Nietzsche was not a satisfaction merchant. He was pointing at the possibility of living from the inside out instead of the outside in, of being the author instead of the character, of waking up fully and refusing to go back to sleep no matter how many people tell you the dream was safer. The man who has completed this transformation is not better than anyone else. He is simply no longer available for the performance that everyone else is still maintaining. He doesn't judge them for maintaining it. He remembers being there, knows how hard it is to leave, respects the difficulty of the choice. But he also doesn't pretend he's still participating. Doesn't fake the complaints, the obligations, the performance of being overwhelmed by a life structure he could change if he chose to. He has chosen, and the choice is visible in everything he does, the way he holds himself, the way he uses his time, the way he responds when someone tries to hand him a load he didn't agree to carry. He looks at the load, looks at the person offering it, and says simply, without hostility, "No, that's not mine." That no is the sound the lion makes, not a roar. A refusal, quiet, final, unchallengeable. The sound of a man who finally knows the difference between his life and the performance of a life, who has chosen his life, who is living it, right now, today, in the body that used to carry weight it never agreed to, and now moves through the world 30 pounds lighter even though the scale says the same number. The weight was never physical. It was the accumulated mass of other people's expectations, performed obligations, values he inherited instead of chose, and he put it down, all of it, not in one dramatic moment, in 10,000 small sovereign acts that accumulated into a life that finally, against all odds, belongs to him. If you're reading this and you recognize the man in the mirror, if you've had the Wednesday morning fracture moment and you're sitting in the gap between seeing and doing, understand that the gap is the territory. The gap is where the lion gets built. Not in the moment of recognition, not in the eventual transformation, in the space between them, where you're learning to tolerate the discomfort of not knowing what comes next, while refusing to go back to what came before. The gap is where the old script loses its authority, where the question, "Why am I doing this?" finally gets asked without immediately getting answered by the program, where you learn, slowly, and with great difficulty, to trust your own assessment of what matters over the inherited catalog of what you're supposed to want. The gap takes as long as it takes. Months, sometimes years. But the man who emerges on the other side is not the man who entered it. He's the one who was always there underneath the camel's load. The one who was waiting with increasing impatience for you to finally put the weight down and ask him what he actually wants. Drop "I reclaim my time" in the comments if this landed somewhere real. And if someone you know is still standing in front of that mirror, still seeing the mechanism but not yet moving, send them this. The awakening is contagious, but only if it reaches someone who's ready to catch it. Subscribe because the next video is about the men who made the transformation and what happened after. The part nobody tells you about freedom. It's harder than slavery in ways that matter. And the men who can't handle that difficulty end up right back where they started, just with better vocabulary,